smashed. Yeah.
Right, here we go. The stream has started. Just waiting for YouTube to get its act together. We've started recording. Something's happening.
Oh, we're streaming on YouTube
We are,
now.
yeah. Literally, just as you said that, it came to life. So that's good. Ladies and gentlemen, for whatever unfortunate reason, you have landed here with me at 7:30 on a Friday night. Joining me for this latest episode of Ed Thompsin and Other Disappointments. This week, my guest is a TV production consultant and viral/comedic content creator. You might have seen his work if you saw in my opinion, hilarious parody of the John Lewis Christmas adverts a couple of years ago. I don't want to ruin it for anyone, but it involves a gingerbread man, and it's quite dark humor. But it's a great fucking parody. It's like a little animated short, and my research tells me that that's been seen 300,000 times on your account, right? But then I think it got pinched a couple of times, did it? Or
Yeah, and then it was on the Poke and quite a lot on Twitter as well.
So we'll round it up to 5 million views, right? So
yeah, it's about that. I've got a few bits of work off of the back of that, actually. Yeah, a few people. I was one of them was Tom Rosenthal.
Who's he? I feel like I should know him.
An email from his Friday night dinner.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, comedian. We should know him from stand-up, surely.
I don't think I've ever gigged with him. I vaguely... In fact, let me Google his face, and then I'll tell you if I know who you're talking about. Hold on. Tom Rosenthal. No, do you know what? I don't think I do.
Imagine a younger Jim Rosenthal.
Yeah, he doesn't ring any bells, like his face. Have I gigged with him? Should I know him? Am I making a complete dick out myself now by saying all this?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, he did the old short student comedy stuff a long time ago, and so it's probably it was probably just different stages. Probably weren't doing open mics at the same time or whatever.
I mean, you don't need to give me a get out of jail free card. If I've gigged with him and I don't remember him, then I'm a bit of an arsehole. But yeah, sorry, Tom, in the unlikely event that you're one of my 300 or 500 listeners. Thanks very much for joining me tonight, Stoph. I thought you'd be an interesting guy to get on the show because of, I suppose, our backgrounds and how we came to know each other through the now defunct social network Vine. And we both got a sort of shared love and hate of the London comedy circuit. But we're also sort of quite...
Yeah. Well, I thought he was going to say London, but yeah.
Yeah, well, for me, it's a shared sort of like a love-hate thing with comedy. I quite like London. I don't know. I get the feeling sometimes that with you just hate it now. Is that fair?
Yeah, for the most part. I just kind of hate it. I don't know. It just seems like a really... generally really dull, boring dystopia.
Really? Because we were
like, once you pull back the kind of the layers of like, I mean, I do enjoy that I can be like, oh, fancy a Korean barbecue tonight, and I can get it, but there's only so much, fast food and bourgeois leisure economy you can put up with.
Like, is it a bit like for you? Is it like a sort of person that you were married to 28 years ago, and now it's like, it's familiar and I love it, but also I'm really fucking sick of it. Like,
it's like a person I married when I was 2, and and there was obviously a really dodgy dynamic going on there. No, I don't know. Yeah, no, it is. It's sort of like nostalgia for. Yeah, it's sort of nostalgia for how things were. I don't know. I don't really know.
We were going to touch on gentrification like a bit later on in this, but
we'll come back to that.
Well, let's just fucking dive right into it. I mean, like, I sort of look at London as like the people who say that they don't like it, that say that it's too wanky. Invariably are actually the ones that benefit from it kind of being a bit wanky. Like, so for example, you work in TV production and online content. Have you ever been tempted to just like fuck off to Manchester or like Edinburgh or somewhere, so that then you've got the same, well, not the same media footprint, but you'd have opportunities up there, but you wouldn't have to deal with all the wanky like hipster stuff that you hate?
I guess, but I don't know. I think that would be like conceding defeat in a
Right.
way. And then realistically, I'm just doing the kind of the same thing, you know, sort of elsewhere that pissed me off.
Oh, I see.
But no, I was tempted. I mean, I've looked at what, you know, what I could get for if I sold up and moved to Leeds, live like a fucking king. But I don't know. Even though sort of a lot of my sort of friends I grew up with are moving further out, and a lot of my family are moving further out, it sort of feels like what I'm familiar with.
I suppose it's. I can understand. Oh, have I lost you? I hope not. I can understand the admitting defeat. Like there must be an element of like, well, why should I leave? Like it's all these cunts that have come here and like ruined it. I just want my city back to like how it was. There might. Is there a part of you that's like, well, it's obviously not going to go back to how it was in like, I don't know, the 80s or 90s or whatever decade you're like fantasizing about in your head.
Yeah. That stuff, you're probably always a decade behind, right? I mean, like the boomers that fantasize about the war, they, you know, were mostly not born, you know, so it's sort of they fantasize about a time just before they knew. But I don't know, you know, it's not even sort of talking about, you know, like it being wanky or like superficial or all that kind of stuff, which it is.
Yeah.
That's not really sort of what bothers me about it so much as a lot of it doesn't change, you know, a lot of it's sort of this, I don't know, I guess, because the thing is, like, I do a lot of, I work on a lot of TV and advertising stuff. So I've done a bit sort of as an actor, or fucking actor, you know, if you've seen any of the fucking ads I've been in, I wasn't an actor, I was human scenery, you know what I mean? But yes, I've done a bit of that. I've done, and I've been a runner. I mean, I've also worked as an editor, and you say, you know, you just meet the same kinds of people. Whenever people sort of ask where you're from or this and that, I was like, oh yeah, oh Walthamstow. Oh, you must be so pleased with what's happened with it. And it's like, well, you know, you don't need to be so fucking proud of yourself. Like what? There's a fucking There's more sourdough now. Fucking yeah. Like do you know what I mean? It's like,
but then it like,
and it's
is it not? That sounds sort of quite white savior like complex. It's a bit like, aren't you? You must be so happy with what people like me have done with your neighborhood. Is that fair? Or is that how it sort of like rubs you up the wrong?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's I always sort of imagine it as quite like colonialism. You know, all right, yeah, that's probably like really highly offensive to someone whose like family was butchered in the Belgian Congo or whatever. But like, it's that, I don't know, because you're saying about, you know, they've got this like savior complex, and you know, not to get too fucking or whatever, but a lot of these people are very kind of left wing. I mean, I am, but like a lot of these people are very left wing, very woke. And it's like, but at the same time, you're so proud of yourself to kind of move into a working class or sort of very diverse area, and then just steal in a house.
It's like,
so, you know, it's not the most.
I sometimes think of it as the sort of like residential / property equivalent of when upper middle class kids go to Glastonbury, and it's like, you know, in the third world, people are literally living in tents. And walking through mud, and you know, they walk for an hour or a day or 2 days to get some fresh water, and it's kind of like the same in like a Glastonbury kind of setting, but in Glastonbury it's like a novelty. It's like, oh my god, like wouldn't this be crazy if we actually lived like this, Hugo? And you know, that's actually someone's life somewhere, right? And it's sort of like a watered down, diluted version of that when you're talking about, you know, you've got somebody who has a flat bought for them in Walthamstow, for example, and they love the fact that they're living in a or Shoreditch. Maybe Shoreditch is a better example. Like a few years ago, Shoreditch was still a bit rough, right? and then somebody bought their son a nice flat, and the son really liked the fact that it was a bit edgy and a bit dirty, and there was graffiti and there was a little bit of crime, and it's like, well, wouldn't it be amazing if we actually lived here? But they know that they fucking don't, because they know they're just in that flat for like 5 years while it gains capital growth, and then they fuck off back to Mayfair or wherever it is that they're from.
Yeah, and then that flat is inevitably rented at a fucking ridiculous rate that's much higher than it would have been if they'd have just stayed the fuck at home rather than having their little fucking safari park experience. It's like, I don't know. I think it's quite, when people say that, oh, it's so edgy and stuff like that, I think that's sort of almost like, it's almost the equivalent of like having your nose pressed up against the glass at the zoo, just watching the fucking primitive primates.
Yeah.
Like, it's sort of, I don't know. There's something.
I know what you mean.
When people say edgy, there's something you can kind of take, like, oh, edgy. Oh, you know what I mean? There's a certain context behind saying that something's edgy.
I know what you mean. Like, there's a
I don't know. I guess it's almost like an appropriation
to it, where it's like, I love this place. It's so edgy. And then if you started peeling the onion, you'd eventually get down to the what I suspect is the truth, which is like, isn't it so much fun to be on safari here and see all these plebs out in the wild? Like, that's what it feels like.
Yeah. It's like those fucking idiots who keep going up Everest. You've seen those. I don't know if there's quite a good film I watched the other day, so that's why in my mind. My girlfriend had us watch this documentary about Everest and the Sherpas and stuff. And it's just basically more middle-class white exploitation. Because the Sherpas are fucking going up, risking their life, setting up base camps on the way. And like, these base camps on the way up Everest have got like fucking libraries and TV and heaters and fucking catering. And like, the Sherpas are the ones that are like trekking across ice floes to set all this shit up. And then they go, oh, I had such a great time in Everest, take a selfie. That's something that stays with them. But fucking, next season, the Sherpas are at it again.
Yeah, I know. But then here's the weird thing is, I feel like I'm going to be a bit of a hypocrite now, because there's a lot of London where it's been gentrified, and it's been advertised as, oh yeah, this is a real up and coming area, and and I'll go there, and there'll be like little cafes and little like craft ale shit, and like independent venues spring up, and all the shit that winds you up about, where you're like, oh fuck's sake, like these motherfuckers like move into every neighborhood and then the rents go up and all of that stuff. I really love it. Like, I remember like hanging around in like parts of Hackney and seeing like these little independent bakeries and stuff, and I'd be thinking, I live in Turnpike Lane and it's such a shithole. Like, I wish that they'd build Crossrail in Turnpike Lane just so it like improved it.
Yeah. I mean, I can't speak too much for Turnpike Lane. I don't know. It sounds like a shithole. But I don't know. I just don't. I think the thing is as well is it doesn't really change that much, really. Yeah. Like that's the thing. I think they are quite superficial little changes. Like, all right. I mean, I can't fault the hipsters for bringing craft beer, but then again, you can go to fucking Lidl, buy a bunch of like actually really good like little hipstery craft beers, and the fucking.
This is where it gets weird, though.
And they're cheaper, and it's like, and that's the thing, because and this is.
Oh, I was just going to say, like, this is the thing, is it's the difference between, right? So you take the craft ale in Lidl, for example, or Aldi, and then you take a craft ale that's served up by a bearded guy with a load of tattoos in a MDF strewn half bar, right? That is a different product that you're buying. Like, when you go into Lidl and you buy a little craft ale, you're buying a little like these, right? You're buying a little beer to take home, and then you just sit on your couch and you drink it, and it tastes nice, but it's not the same experience as going into a gentrified hipster little twatty bar. Do you know what I mean? And it's the difference between the serial killer cafe in Brick Lane and sitting at home and having your breakfast. It's like they're completely different markets, and I get why they sort of wind people up, because it's like, well, not everyone can share in this experience of going into a little bar in Brick Lane and paying £5 for a bowl of cereal. And not everyone can, like, if you sprung up a little craft ale bar in parts of Tower Hamlets, probably no one in the actual area would be able to go to them. So it's like there's an argument there of like, well, what community are you serving by springing up these little things? And it all fits under that kind of hipster gentrification-y stuff. But I still can't fucking help myself in that, like, when we were living in... You're right.
Hang on.
Have I lost you? You okay? I've still got you there.
I thought the engine's suddenly gone a bit shit.
I was just in my mid-rant there. I think I'm okay on my end, so... But all I was going to say, I don't know if this will kick in again, but basically, I was just saying, like, I can't help myself. Like, when we were living in Peckham, I would go up to pick up my son from nursery, and there was this little place there called the Beer Shop, and I fucking loved it. I used to go in there and have a couple of beers before I picked up my then, like... 2-year-old or 3-year-old. I probably stank. I was that dad, like rocking up to nursery smelling like beer.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess, you know, when you're sort of talking about like the experience of having it, you know, that's a context that's, you know, very important. That is, you know, like with anything, it's part of the experience. Like drinking whiskey, you know, like if you know that it's some even if it tastes the same, some imitation whiskey that was knocked out in a batch over like 2 weeks using some new technology, it'd lose something, because you want to associate with a story or a context or something behind it. But that's the thing. I even with that sort of thing, because I do go to that, like some of those, like I really love Beer and Burger in Kingston Road, right? It's great. Great burgers and a great selection of craft beer, and it's you know, cool and that. But at the same time, two of my rich American friends live in a flat literally around the corner that you know, a council estate was bulldozed to make way for it, and the flat's worth $800,000.
Wow.
So it's, you know, it's sort of like, so what is the price for that sort of
whoa,
what is basically, you know, just sort of a dusting on the top of it, you know? It's like,
but it's also like, how far back do you go as well? Because I remember bitching and moaning to people about how we got priced out of London, because we lived I lived just off Brick Lane, and then I moved out to Ealing, and then I moved out to Brentford a little bit further, and then got together with my missus, and in order to have a family, we had to move all the way out to fucking Guildford. And then when we got to Guildford, we couldn't afford to buy anywhere in Guildford, so we moved again, like out to Aldershot. So it's like at every juncture, we've just got nudged further and further out. And I would stand there with a straight face and bitch and moan at people like, it's not fair, like, we shouldn't be priced out of our area. And meantime, spent the whole 7 years I was in London loving areas that, that gentrified and pushed out genuine local Londoners, probably like yourself, Stov, like where... it's like, oh, this area is so cool now. And like, you know, somebody like you would be like, you know, they fucking evicted 150 families to build this fucking thing. Like,
yeah. Like, and you know, I think, because there was one, I can't remember, I think it was Highgate Estate. The story of that, it was it's very central, what was a very central London council estate. And one of the sort of first with the big sort of redevelopment plan. And what really bothered me about it, and really sort of, you know, pissed off my kind of lefty commie sensibilities, was that basically, well, I found out my granddad, just a side note, because I've been doing this show about my granddad, like live show, hopefully for Edinburgh, and a big part of, like, I sat down and learned about his life and stuff. He was a fucking like right on communist, like because he was a peasant farmer in Cyprus. Like, he was a peasant, literally a peasant, like grow the food peasants, and eat it.
Not that kind of peasant farm. Right, okay, cool.
Yeah, he had peasant crops as far as the eye could see. And but
this is your like acting in bad faith show, like, right? You know,
yeah, exactly. And and sort of learning about his life and stuff. And then after he, you know, left Cyprus, he didn't immediately sort of come to England. He like spent some years like fucking about, and he was like in East Germany with this sort of commie thing, and it's fucking nuts.
I
but anyway,
wish that I could, like, both my granddads died before I was born, Like one of them was very old, I think. See, I don't even fucking know anything about them really. Like, I think one of them was quite old, so not totally surprising that he wasn't with us. But my dad's dad died of a heart attack when he was like 55 or something. He was pretty young. So I've never had an opportunity to like drink in these sort of, you know, pensioner stories and like wartime, you know, all that stuff. All I can go on is what other people tell me, which is invariably, you'd never know a hard day's work in your life, son, like that sort of shit. Like, which is, maybe that's true, but like that's someone else's like I'd love to sit down with my like grandfathers and hear the kind of tales it sounds like you heard. Is there a part of you that's like...
Yeah, no, it was great. And it was great because I videoed it as well.
Is there a part of you when you were talking to him where you were like, I am such a piece of shit. Like, here I am moaning about...
Oh, no.
Really?
100%. Like, that was literally the basis of the show in the end. The show was about how, you know, when I left uni, you know, fucking, I did a master's degree. My granddad was a peasant.
How he managed that dynamic? Because that's really what I'm looking for with this show, is to make you come away feeling like, I am such a piece of shit.
Well, I mean, yeah, literally it was sort of just understanding how like our grandparents' generation and stuff just got on with stuff because they had to. Like, they didn't have the option of fucking about like I do. And been like, oh, I think I'm going to be an actor now. And you know, and he's sitting there being like, oh yeah, and then, you know, there was a coup, so all my land was taken by the Turks, so I had to, you know, and it's like, because we've got land in Cyprus and we still can't go to it. Like, we can maybe do a day visit. Yeah. That's it.
That's fucking nuts, you know? Isn't it? It's like, it's like real hardship. Yeah. Like the kind of hardship you have no recourse of fighting back. Some guy in a fucking soldier uniform just rocks up and goes, yeah, you know this house that was yours? You're like, no, this is my house. I bought it. It's mine. I own all the land all around it. They're like, yeah, no, this is property of the state now. Fuck off. Like, what would you do? And if you know, like, if you fight back, they'll just shoot you in the head and like do God knows what to your family. So yeah, like real problems. Meanwhile, like people like you and me are like, this guy said something mean to me on Twitter and I just can't get it out of my head.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, because like I had a massive, horrible bout of depression. Like, because I've always had like depression problems, like all fucking straight white men these days, you know. Yeah, and so like, and that was sort of a big part of what prompted it, because it was like, look, I'm gonna try and get some fucking perspective. I mean, I've got some perspective, but it just showed me more of what a piece of shit I am. Kind of shone more of a light on it, if anything. Yeah. Like, well, I went into this thinking might be a piece of shit, and now I just know for sure exactly what it is about
fighting fire with fire. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? It's like, you know, I have quite a, I can't even think of the adjective really to use here, but I have quite a healthy, I think, attitude to depression. Speaking as someone who I think I was never diagnosed, but I think I suffered with depression reasonably badly in my late 20s and maybe early 30s. And I've listened to a few podcasts on it and stuff, and I don't know if I'll cling to this belief forever, but certainly for the last few years, and I think for the foreseeable future until someone convinces me otherwise, I think my attitude to it is like, when I felt the most depressed was when I had no real goals and no real feeling like I was actually working towards something. So when people come out and say, well, you're only depressed because you haven't got something to work on, or you're only depressed because you haven't got something to put your mind on, like, you know, focus and work towards, I actually sort of buy into that quite a lot, because since I don't know if it would work for everyone, but since I see, this is going to sound really pretentious and fucking insufferable now, but since I got into like stand up, that was the first time in my life I felt like I could fucking do this. I actually feel like every week as I try this joke again, and I'm going to twist this word here, and I'm going to try a slightly different metaphor, or, you know, the process that we go through. And and every week it would just sort of, you know, improve a bit, and then I'd fuck up and I'd be like, oh well, I'll go back and try this other, you know. But there was a crescendo of sort of achievement to it, where I was like, I can feel myself getting better and more confident at this, and it was like a skill set and a confidence that was growing that I had never really felt before. Like I'd had other hobbies and shit, but never anything where I'd actually had people coming up to me afterwards and like being honest with me and saying like, that was great, that was really good, like you should do this, excited about it for me, like, and it completely changed like how I felt about it. I was like, I could fucking do anything. I could, like, if I just work hard at this, I can actually do this. And now I feel like when people get depressed or they speak about depression, the first thing that leaps in my head is like, well, what are you working on? What are you trying to do? Like, have you got hobbies? Are you working? Are you training?
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, it's definitely a bit of both, you know, because I guess what you're sort of talking about is one kind of depression where, you know, it's that kind of listlessness, you know, because we're like monkeys that have evolved to start dealing with fucking problems as they arise, and we haven't really got any. So like, you know, so then we sort of turn our thoughts inwards and start going, oh fuck me, I'm a piece of shit and this and that, and again, you know, sort of, you know, sort of going about like sort of show thing too much, but like what you're saying, because when I started writing this show, I started getting really into like reading philosophy, because like because it's about being an actor, right? So it's called acting in bad faith, but that's you know, that's sort of a reference to stuff in like philosophy, you know, stuff like Sartre and Camus and that. So like, bro, I've got to learn about this. And then, you know, so you learn about, so Camus sort of was this philosopher that pointed out how absurd life is, and everything's meaningless and this and that. And the sort of shit that makes people go, oh, you know, life is meaningless. But he starts talking about, and this is what my show opens with, you know, with like this sort of, with like this picture of Sisyphus. Right, so it's like me with Sisyphus's head. It's like this bit weird dream sequence.
Right,
it makes
I'm
sense.
Nodding along like I know who the fuck Sisyphus is. I have no idea.
Oh, Sisyphus, right? All right, it's like a Greek myth, right? It's this king thought he was better than the gods, so they punish him by saying, right, you've got to push a boulder up a hill forever.
Oh, right.
And as soon as it gets, and like, you know, and as soon as it gets to the top, the boulder rolls back down again. So he has to go back down, and that's forever. The boulder, as he gets to the summit, the boulder rolls back down. And it's just sort of thing about the pointlessness of it all and how futile your life is and everything like that. And that's sort of this, it's just become like this sort of thing that people pin all their fucking hopeless, like teeny angst on, you know, like, oh, go, you know, it's so meaningless, like your toil takes you this far and then it just comes back down again, blah, blah, blah. But then Camus,
I thought you were going to say like that so then what happens if you associate psychologically, if you associate achievement and working towards something with imminent and infinite failure? Like if every time you push the boulder up the hill, you know it's always going to come back down. Or I suppose in a modern like reality-based example, you push the boulder all the way up the hill and maybe that problem won't come back down, but it will create new boulders and new, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, but this is sort of what, like, so rather than, because I think like a lot of all this stuff that I was reading about philosophy it was stuff like, and I wrote this about me having like this basic mental breakdown. It was like my way of working through it, and it just made it worse. It really fucking made. And but like one thing I came like with this Camus was that he says you've got to imagine Sisyphus as like happy, right? He's this absurd figure. Because he's got a goal in life. It's like, all right, he might not ever achieve it, but it's like, all right, we'll take pleasure in the journey up and the walk back down, and just be like, all right, well, you know, fucking say la vie. And I think, and that's sort of what makes me think of when you're saying about, you know, your depression. Your idea of depression is about people having something to do, or having a goal, and like to an extent, like definitely, because you've got to have something to do. But then there's that other kind of depression that's just like chemical, fucking like weather.
Right.
You know, it's like it's just a phenomenon that happens. It's like like when I've been really seriously depressed and people come up to me after I've done like a good gig or whatever, and they go, "Oh yeah, no, I really liked your show," and I'm thinking, "You fucking lying bastard! How dare you?"
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah,
depression.
yeah. I get that. And to be honest, I completely discounted that because I've, arrogantly in my bubble, I've never experienced, I'm sure there's people that would disagree with me on this, but I've never experienced what I would imagine to be a chemical imbalance. And now it may be that I was born with a chemical imbalance and it's never really, never really resettled. And thus it's not really an imbalance to me. But yeah, you're right. I'm sure there is, a chemical and scientific diagnosis to be had for people who just don't produce enough serotonin, or whose childhoods and upbringing were so traumatic that for them praise and all the usual things that would result in an endorphin rush actually have the opposite effect, because the people that raised them, when they told them that they did something well, it inevitably led to a horrible situation maybe. So there's weird and wonderful sort of colors and textures to depression. I suppose I'm sort of speaking very selfishly from my own experience. I'm like, I felt a bit I felt a bit down and a bit lost, then I found something to work on and it turned out all right.
Yeah, but then that's not necessarily to say that like how shit you were feeling when you were down isn't as bad. Like if the cause is something different, it might have, it's like, all right, well, that might be caused by a chemical imbalance. That might be caused because everything is shit. But if the result is the same, then you still feel, you still feel rubbish.
Yeah, I guess so. I suppose it's finding the right solution for you, right? Like I found ways and means in the working world and through family to make me, I mean, a lot of it is I just don't have the free time to sit and ponder and dwell anymore. Like back in the day, I had all the time in the world to sit there and think like, oh shit, remember that time when I said that thing to that girl and I was like 18 and she looked distraught, like, oh god, I'm such a piece of shit. Like I don't have time to fucking like to lay there and ruminate over the mistakes I made in my teens and 20s anymore. I'm too busy like getting the juice for my 4-year-old, cleaning, like sticking some washing on, doing this, doing that, like trying to sort out the podcast. Like so I don't know. I wonder if a similar course of action would work for people with a chemical deficiency. Like if you didn't produce enough serotonin and you did get sad a lot, if you just stayed busy, do you think that would help? I don't know. If it would.
I think it would help some people, maybe. I mean, for me, like, about saying about my, my granddad having to actually struggle and, like his life of actually having to grow the food to eat and stuff like that. I mean, if I had stuff to preoccupy me to that extent, I wouldn't be as fucking depressed as I am now, 100%, like guaranteed. But then I think there is also the other times where it's like, sometimes I'll be sitting there and I'll be sitting here, working away on something, like I've got an edit I've got to do or whatever. Actually, yeah, quite often when I've got an edit, 'cause if I'm editing an ad, I feel really like shit. You're making something it's made to be ignored. So it doesn't, you don't feel like creative or anything like that. And I'm sitting there, I'm still doing it, I'm still working, but I'm like, yeah, this is bullshit and I fucking want to die.
Yeah.
And some people, it is worse like that. It's like, oh, he got up, he fucking went to work every day, he walked his dog, and then one day he hung himself. Do you know what I mean?
It's funny, isn't it? It's like that sometimes I'm brought back to the example of where people fantasize about winning the lottery and they go, oh, if I won the lottery, I'd be so happy. If I had 5 million in the bank, I'd be so happy. I'd never have to work again, and I'd just be so happy. And I actually think it's I mean, I have no scientific research to back this up, but I can imagine, knowing what I do know about mock psychology, that if you did win 5 mil, that money was in the bank, and you had no job to go to, all your friends are still going to their jobs, and you've got no purpose, no reason to get up in the morning, it's got to be a bit like, I mean, you can fill up your time, right? To some extent, you can go on a holiday, you go on this, you go on that, you treat your friends to a night out here and there. So I'm sure you could stay busy for a bit. But A, you don't want to piss away all that money, so you wouldn't keep doing that. And B, you would just run out of these sort of salacious big nights out, and like eventually you'd be like, let's just buy a house and set, and then you would sit down and you'd be bored. And I actually think, weirdly, perversely, for some people, winning the lottery would be the death of them. I think they'd win it and they'd be like, this is all I've ever wanted and I'm fucking miserable. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, I think because we're just built different. Some people have to know that they're getting up in the morning and going and doing a thing, and know that they're. And the thing is, yeah, sometimes as a freelancer, I'll have big chunks of time where I don't have any work in, and my mates are sort of talking about their blah 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 happened at work and this and that, and then we're going on holiday here, and I'm just thinking, oh, fucking cunts, and then. But that's not me hating them because they're doing what they're supposed to do. I'm just projecting because I'm not working at that point. But that's it. I think maybe, that's, we definitely need to be occupied. But I think I don't kind of think that it's a big part of it. It's just to be conditioned that working equals good and that's your value in the world. Is that more of a societal thing?
To some extent. It's like the reason that, I don't know if this is related or not, but the reason that a mortgage is priced and stretched out to the number of years that it is, and why inheritance tax is set to the level that it is because it will take you 25 or 30 years to pay off your mortgage, and by that point you're retired. And then when you die, you either pay with your care for it, right, or you sell it and you give it to your kids, and then they have to, I don't know, say you die, they have to pay a huge chunk of it on inheritance tax, and basically it works out that there's a nice little bit for your kids, but it's not enough to keep them off the hamster wheel, right? And to some extent I think it's all set up like that societally to keep people working, and so there is this sort of investment across Western society that everyone should always be working. You need to go and find a job. You need to, figure out what you want to do with your life. You got to go, what if you do just want to sit smoking weed and reading comics? I don't know. I can't imagine that's for me, but like you say, people are built differently. Maybe some people, they'd fucking love that.
Yeah. There's so many philosophical things I want to drop, but I don't want to seem like too much of a wanker.
Yeah, I was going to say, so do you ever get in trouble for, you've mentioned that you are left-leaning and you're from London. You've done all this research into philosophy. Do you think you are knocking on the door of metropolitan Islington elitism at all?
Yeah, a little bit.
Well,
it's funny you say that. I mean, because all my family are from Highbury and Holloway.
Oh, really?
So yeah, but it's kind of odd because I don't know, because it depends on what kind of generations reference point, what kind of image of metropolitan, or sort of, what do you really mean by that? Do you mean you can't, because these are quite kind of middle classy kind of things, is that what makes you middle class? Or
yeah,
because for instance, my nan's from very working class, fucking big fucking family of 14 kids, had to work at 14 years old and stuff, and she was quite Tory. Really? Yeah. Quite a lot of my family are, because she was very much she worked hard, and half her family were crooks, half of them worked in kind of law enforcement, and she was some CID thing. Yeah, and she worked hard, and and she was oh, fucking hell, I'll cut them down the road. They've got electric lights.
Yeah.
So, but that sort of, that kind of climb out of the working class, I think that's the thing that's changed. What does working class even mean anymore? What does metropolitan elite mean more than sort of...
The thing that confuses me is so you and I have had sort of amusing exchanges on this before, and you always rib me for being middle class, which I think is always fueled by the way that I speak. But that's because I'm from the fucking home counties, motherfucker. So
yeah, if someone said that to me, I'd be like, you fucking snob.
But it's I mean, I get in trouble sometimes with this on TikTok because people assume from the way that I speak that I'm some sort of privately educated guy, and that if I talk about the working class, then I get myself in all kinds of trouble. I get told that I shouldn't. I'm not entitled to talk about the working class. So there's that, but then there's also this sort of anomaly of at what point does someone stop being working class? Like I read a definition the other day where they said it's no longer about whether you work or not. It's actually the way that they define, the way that this person on Twitter defined it was, they said the working class, the middle class shower before work and the working class shower after work. And I think what they were getting at was, if you do a sort of, a manual labor job and you're out there sweating all day in a warehouse or driving a forklift or you're a bricklayer or whatever, you're going to come home and have a shower, right? If you're a recruiter or an estate agent or, whatever it is, if you're sitting in an office and you're showering before work, even though it's not paying, or it might not be paying like loads, there's still, it's seen as middle class. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird.
I mean that analogy completely breaks down for me, because I sit in my shed in my garden, and then halfway through the day is when I go and shower and shake, and halfway through the day shower and change my pants class. And that just that's yeah, that sets you off. That changes your fucking life. Just change your pants halfway through the day.
Yeah,
you're golden. Yeah, 100%. That's my I mean, if I could give anyone any piece of advice, that's the one.
I love the idea that there might be like people tuning into this for advice on TV production or like viral content and shit, and you're just like, honestly, change your pants. 11 a.m., 12 p.m. Like, thank me later.
Yeah, 100%. No, do it and report back to me. But no, I think the thing is, you're saying, but you're saying about you change your pants after work or whatever because you've got a more manual job, and this and that. It's quite funny because like that definition of the working class is, the people who do the peasant work, the grunt work, that kind of stuff. That doesn't really, that forms such a tiny part of what you maybe think of the working class or of the overall workforce, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not really that anymore. Because a lot of, I think the reason I sort of like rib people about being middle class is because I don't know where I stand in it. Like my parents are like, no, you're middle class, you come.
I mean, you work in TV.
You own a flat. You've got a fucking, you've got an MA and a fucking, and you ponce around in arts, like, but at the same time, like, I still, for the most part, earn less than my friends who do have traditional working class jobs.
Right. Yeah. So this is an interesting like distortion or contortion of our understanding of class, and I can't remember where I heard it. It might have been on an Ian Dunn podcast, but he was talking about like Britain's obsession with the northern ex-Labour voter, and like Labour need to get back in touch with the traditional working class, etc., etc. And the media narrative is that these are ex-mining families, and Labour lost them, and Labour are too sort of Islington Ramona elite, right? And he was like, why is there this sort of expectation politically that a electrician or a plumber, some of these guys will be like putting in 50, 80, 100K. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. Like sometimes plumbers, sparkies, that's what they make. 100%. They make good fucking wedge, but they will be valued in terms of their vote and why Labour lost them above some like 22K a year or like 20K a year university graduate in London who's living in a house share with fucking mice walking all over the floor. It's like, who's the working class one there? Do you know what I mean?
No, exactly. Yeah, because it'd be things like, my Uncle Terry, right? He's not, he's dead now, but he was one of the richest people I knew. He's from Peckham, started work at 14 years old as a milkman, and was a milkman most of his life. But he was absolutely
Really?
fucking
How?
loaded. Absolutely loaded. Yeah. Well, so when my this is quite weird. So my dad used to be a milkman. So my dad's quite middle class, to be fair. Like he works in IT and but he when I was very little, he was a milkman and he started his round around Brick Lane. And yeah, no, it was like it was to be fair totally different then. And yeah, and but he'd start his round there, but like it wasn't like door to door, it was sort of business to business. And like, so it'd be like going to banks and houses of parliament they used to deliver to and stuff like that. But it was all, so you'd have like milk and cream and cheese and fucking yogurt and juice and all this shit as well. But what they do, and like, so you basically, you're running a business, you're almost self-employed, you're kind of a contractor for the dairy. And if you just were a bit smart with it, you could make a lot of money. Like one of the guys my dad worked with, what they used to do is like you could buy like your cream from the dairy and it'd be priced in per gallon, and then you could sell it in like either per pint or per liter, and then there's conversion that goes on, and then when you resell it, there's a markup between what you paid, what you say you paid to the client, and then that, and and so this guy used to make like about 1,200 quid a week just off of cream. His cream racket alone would give him an extra 1,200 quid a week.
Let me back up a little bit, check I understand this. So your uncle's a milkman. He does the rounds for the milk, like the dairy place, right? And then what he's doing is he's sort of going over to these businesses, and they are businesses, not residential. And he's saying like, or is he even telling them, or is he just sort of saying like going over to this place over here, buying in a load of cream, and then he sells the cream to them, and they think they're buying it from the dairy, or he's saying to them like, you can get your cream cheaper with me?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing, because like the reason my uncle then obviously made a lot more money was that he set up his own kind of business. But you are still going to the dairy. You're still, but not a contractor. But then he had like his own vans going out and doing this and that. But yeah, it was basically that. It was just. And I think, to be honest, if someone's cockney enough, and they come up to you and they've like, he used to talk like he had a roll up, just balance like, yeah. So I told Si, get the van, like go around there, get the van, just talk about right there. Do you know what I mean? And like, I just think people like that, I feel like there's just an instant like power balance in their favor. It's like, no, you're so working class that I'll just believe what you're saying.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like you wouldn't assume. I don't know what, like, is that a sort of embedded snobbery in me? Like I wouldn't assume that somebody that spoke like that was going to fuck me over. I'd be like, no, you're a good guy. Like you're happy for my business. Like it's so weird ingrained in my head. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's like, there.
Yeah, and I'm sure people play on it and stuff. Like it's like when you get a call center. They have the specific stages of when you phone a call center. The first ones are usually Geordies, because like they've found that it's the most comforting and relatable accent. So they go, "Oh, you're having trouble with your internet today, person?" And you go, "Oh, well, it's not that bad. It's just, But if it escalates, as the problem escalates, and this is a real thing, the people you deal with become progressively more middle class until you're like, okay, so I'm Mr. BT and we're going to sort it. Do you know what I mean? So like people go, like, as people's rage, there's tears to it, and they go, no, you need to speak to a Geordie, you need to speak to a you need to speak to a middle class man.
Somewhere in your like, RBS or like NatWest Bank customer service thing, there's a chart that says like, how angry is he? And then they look at the chart and they're like, is he Geordie? No, all right, okay, like Buckinghamshire. Oh, I better talk to him. Yeah.
I really hope there is.
So you mentioned that some of your family are sort of quite Tory, even though they're sort of quintessentially working class. Are they sort of on board with a lot of this super anti-wokey, like GB News kind of stuff, or?
I wouldn't have thought so.
That's reassuring. That's good.
Because I think they're sort of, it's kind of weird. Like some of them are quite Tory, but are kind of like in other ways pretty progressive, you know. And I think to be honest, I think
so you've got,
well, you know,
they're quite Tory as in like they don't want to fund like layabouts, I guess is the traditional like, right, okay.
Yeah.
And then they're quite progressive in the sense that what?
Well, they're not necessarily, I think like there's a certain thing, like when you talk about, like if anyone's going to imitate your average Brexiter racist, not that all Brexiters are racist, but you know, most of them, but like it will always be in a kind of, oh no, they're coming over it, and it's sort of this affected, very working class voice. And I even do it if I'm imitating Brexiter or something like, oh yeah, you fucking left me,
I get in so much trouble on TikTok because whenever I do like a dumb Brexiter, I always put on a working class voice, and it's not so bad for you, but like when you, like I'm me, and when I sort of move into a like working class voice to caricature that kind of individual, it's like they see it as me sort of punching down or like trying to insinuate that. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
I mean, that is there. That implication is there, but the thing is, you didn't come up with that trope.
No,
you know,
I don't know why I do it either. Like, and maybe there's some substance to it. Like maybe there is something in my head that's like this type of person is usually a what like. Is that in my head? I don't know. Like, I'm willing to explore it and entertain it, like, well, and discuss it. I suppose where I get off the bus is like when people just like invade my comment section. They're just like, "You fucking classist prick." I'm like, I grew up on council estates. Chill out, like.
I don't know. It is a weird one, but like I guess it's always just going to be seen as like a punching down kind of thing, and like, but that's. Yeah, and it's sort of, but I don't think that's necessarily true, because I think, like, you know, a lot of, like, I don't know why there's this sort of this stereotype that you know, people with that kind of accent or people from London, maybe that's changing now, because maybe London's more associated with different kind of people than it was. But I think like they generally just very quite open people. You know, it's a multicultural area. You know, it's a very multicultural area, and you know, my family's quite multicultural. You know, so
you've got a,
you know, a lot of gays in my family. That's
good.
As well.
Yeah, so. good for the gays. I'd like to think that you've got to be either ferociously ignorant or have some sort of real steadfast commitment to racism to continue to be racist in London, because it's just. Like you're surrounded, like you said a second ago, like it's multicultural. You know, every other street corner that you walk around, there's another language, another accent, another skin pigment. It's to live in London and to be racist, you must have to be angry fucking 24/7. And I've never really encountered anyone like that. But then I don't know, who the fuck am I to sort of say whether an area is racist or not? Because I'm sure if places were racist, like it's not going to affect me in the nicest, most sensitive way possible. It's not something that really like impacts me every day, you know?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like, you know, how every woman says that they get shouted at or commented on in the street, and every man is like, oh no, but surely not, because we're not fucking seeing it, you know. I mean, that was something that took me a long time to kind of really accept. It's only the fact that, you know, everyone's saying it to you. Like, no, we get this all the time. It's like, all right, well, you can't all be
well, there's
lying
two
to
things,
me.
Isn't there? Like, the first thing for me was when I think I was about, it was proper late, man. I was probably older than you are now when I was exposed to this. But, like, I remember meeting Lucy somewhere, and it was about our, like, 5th or 6th date. And I said, like, why do you always phone me before? Like, what? You're always late, and you always phone me before you walk into the bar, like to check that I'm here. Like, so is it like some sort of? I was such a piece of shit. I was like, is it some sort of like ego thing? Like, you want to check that I'm some like lapdog waiting for you? And she was like, no, like honestly, it is like you don't understand. As soon as a woman walks in a bar, she is a target. Like, men will walk up to her, men will ask her to buy a drink, and when she says no, they're like, "Oh, you up yourself, darling," or like, "You should smile." She's like, "I just can't be fucking dealing with it." And that was the first time that anyone, or certainly that I remember. Maybe somebody did tell me this stuff before, but that was the first time I'd ever had someone say, this is what it's like. And it's like, now I say that I was in my mid-30s. It's fucking embarrassing, isn't it? It's like, but then nobody educates young men on it. Like, it's not a course that you do in school.
No, and the thing is, I guess they really should. Like, I don't know. I mean, I sort of look back at school and I think I still resent all the time spent wasted on complete bullshit, like geography and religious studies and stuff like that. And I think, why weren't you ever teaching us to like not be pieces of shit in public, or how to like fucking get a mortgage or something?
Yeah.
Something I'm going to use.
Well, if they taught you if they taught you about finance and compound interest and the dangers of credit cards, then nobody would get credit cards and nobody would get themselves into trouble. And, you know, that's how the system works. I think they're kind of reliant on people to be a bit ignorant about those things. But with things like consent and like respect and like, I'm not a big, you know, sort of dainty male feminist guy, in the sense that, you know, like you and I have been at gigs where we've seen, you know, the archetypal male feminist stand-up comedian, right? But I wouldn't put myself in that bracket, but I'm definitely all about equality. And it's I do think there's a place to just sit young like boys down and teach them. Like, I saw a TikTok the other day by this girl. She's 18, but she's like head fucking screwed on, like switched on. And she was talking about like how we should teach young men to handle rejection. And I was like, that is a fucking gaping hole in, like, I don't know, humanities or, you know, social studies or whatever it is, because nobody does teach you how to do that. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, there is this ingrained part in a man's like brain, or an adolescent's brain. It's like, if you are rejected, that is humiliating. All your friends will laugh at you. How are you going to handle that? You're going to get angry. Are you going to, you know, beat up the guy that did get the girl? Or, do you know what I mean? So there's got to be like ways and means that you can handle that, because it's going to happen. Like, it happens to every guy. So, or maybe that's what I tell myself it happens to every guy. But, you know, it should be taught, I think. But it, as far as I know, it's not being taught still now.
Yeah. I guess. I mean, I don't know. I think it's sort of weird, isn't it? Because it's like, why is it this sort of thing where it's like guys are constantly like, oh shit, I need to fucking have sex right now. I need to, you know, blah, blah, blah. You keep chasing it, where girls are fending off dick with a shitty stick. You know, like, it's a weird, because like, why is that? Like, girls are no less horny, but we're the ones going, oh, fucking.
Well, because I don't know, man. Like, I'm no scientist, but I think it's something to do with like cycles and the sheer amount of sperm that we create in a day. Like, we have, you know, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of sperm that just have to fucking get out. And women have, you know, that window in the month where they're most likely to get pregnant. And so they get horny and they wear less. And I just think from a man's point of view, certainly when they're in that sort of young, reckless adolescent up to, like, you know, 28-ish kind of, which is when the frontal lobe is actually fully developed. So it sort of ties in with it. When they're in that reckless, risk-taking period, a lot of men would just fuck anything. Whereas women don't have to worry about, like, going out to find something that they would sleep with. It's there it's a buffet all the time. Like, most women could walk up, like, not all women, but a lot of women could walk up to a lot of men and say, do you want to fuck? And the guy would immediately go like, yep, yes. Did I say yes already? I should say yes. Yeah. So it is different.
Yeah.
And also there's a sort of, like, there's a common sense element to it, which I just think is baked into, like, women's brains, which is like, you know, if a guy runs around the tribe or the village and just bangs everything that he sees. He can't take care of all of those babies, but he probably won't even try to take care of all of those babies. He'll just run off to a different village and just carry on fucking. Whereas the woman is sort of, she's there with the babe. So for her, there's a vested interest that's biological, that's baked in, that she has to just be more choosy, right? Like, so I think that's, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's the way that I look at it. Anyway, that's how I justify that fewer women wanted to have sex with me than I wanted to have sex with.
Yeah, fair. I just always, I guess I've always just sort of come off really aloof and disinterested with girls, which, you know, has just really helped in the long run.
Well, then why are you growing your hair to look like one? I mean,
you know what? Because when I was like mid-teens and I had a shaved head, I was constantly being like, "Oh, why aren't girls interested in me?" Yeah. Oh, fucking, I remember starting to talk about, "Oh, I might grow my hair because I'm into guitar now and I want to be in a band." And all the girls at school were like, "Oh no, don't do that. You look like a fucking dickhead." And you know, and when I actually grew my hair and had, you know, I was literally one of 2 boys in the school that had long hair. They were like, "Oh," suddenly, like, yeah. I guess that, you know, that's what I always think of with dating apps. Do you know what I mean? Like, because my mate, I was chatting to my mate today because, like, he's having a hard time with dating apps and all that kind of stuff because all the girls in there are kind of like, I want a guy who's 6'2" and this and that and that, and it's all this sort of shopping list, like criteria of stuff. And I always think the fucked up thing about that is if you've already decided what it is exactly that you want, you're completely denying yourself everything else that you don't know that you want and that you might find out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's funny, like, if you... But I think everyone knows what they definitely don't want. That's fine to know that. But to have a few sort of ambiguous things in there, like, I think the older you get, 2 things sort of change. The first thing is that you become more understanding of what's out there and what you could be happy with, and what happiness looks like to you broadly. But also you become kind of more conscious of like what you have to offer. It's like when you're like 20, you're just like, I'm the fucking best thing ever. Yeah. Like the only reason I haven't got a girlfriend is because I'm not willing to settle. Yeah. Like, and then when you get older, you're like, actually, I'm me. And this is, you know, this is what I'm bringing to the table. And do you know what I mean? Like, it's sort of, you think, well, I'm, you know, I've got this and that and this that I've got going for me, and you know, I hope that I can find someone that likes those things and I like them, and you know, it's sort of like things relax a little bit. Like you're less focused on ego and what people think of you and what people might think of your girlfriend or what her friends might think of you, and like all of that shit sort of fades into the distance. And actually what you focus on more is like, do I fancy this person, and like what would they be like in a family, like if we started a family together, and are they supportive and that kind of shit.
But then that's you sort of, you know, it's becoming at peace with who you are and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, but that's sort of more my point though, isn't it? Like if you're that, you know, like someone being, you know, knowing exactly who they are and what they want, it's like that's a thing in itself, but that's not going to be like a thing on a dating app.
No, that's true.
You know, and I just think it's sort of, I don't know, it's like with everything, I just sort of look at everything with this real fucking cynicism now. Because like I used to be so excited about like how the world was changing and technology and we can do this and that. And I just think like now it's just making, I don't know, it's sort of, I just don't sound like an old bastard.
Yeah.
But it's, I don't know, I think it's sort of just like the dating app thing. Even though I'm like, you know, I've been with my missus for like, I don't know, 12 years or some shit.
Quite a while, right? Yeah. How did you meet? Did you meet at college or something?
I was like 19. Yeah, uni. Yeah, I was in first year at uni when I first met her. It's kind of weird. But it's the same as like I kind of in a way miss how TV would just tell you what you had to watch, you know, like, but not because I don't want the option. It's because like, oh, fucking Thursday at 9 o'clock, everyone's watching this and we're sharing this experience together. And
there's a
noise.
sort of innocence that's gone, isn't there? And a joy of finding things, and it's not restricted to just dating. It's something that's rolled out across multiple industries. And the example that like first leaps to my mind is like, if you go back to the 70s or the 60s, and you look at who the massive artists were that like the Beatles, right, and the Stones and Bowie, and these guys were good songwriters. Like, nobody's going to take it away from the Beatles or the Stones that they weren't good songwriters, but they were good songwriters in a time where you listened to Radio 1 or a pirate radio station before Radio 1, and there were only like, you know, 5 or 6 bands, or like, you know, there was only a few songs that were going around, and you would listen to that one radio station. So whoever was on the playlist, you'd be like, oh, I fucking love this song. And so these bands that, like, you had one funnel, one tube, if you like, that sort of came down and gave you your music supply for the week, or every 2 weeks, however often they change the playlist. And so I feel like there's like, they got massive at a time where music was this sort of incredibly restricted drip feed supply, and now it's just fucking everywhere. And it's like, you know, if you love your music, maybe you watch MTV Bass, maybe you listen to fucking Capital Extra, maybe you like go onto Spotify and you curate your own playlist, and like, there's no sort of single source of truth where music comes into people. So there's no opportunity for one band or one singer to become like an Elvis Presley or a Michael Jackson. That, like, those days are fucking done. And in the same way, it's like with TV and films, it's like back in the day, there would be one big blockbuster that would come out a month, and everyone would be like, oh, have you fucking seen Back to the Future yet? Oh, you're missing out. Oh, you got to catch it before it goes on to video. Now it's just like, yeah, have you seen that thing on Netflix? Nah, I'm watching something on Amazon. Oh, right. What are you watching? Oh, one of the other 1,000 things that came out. There's no like special drip feedy feeling anymore. And maybe it's the same with dating. It's like, in fact, I gather from what I've read that it is the same with dating. It's like, you know, this idea of meeting that one person in a bar who's a friend of a friend that you hit it off with, and it's magic, is sort of out the window, because if you meet someone like that, you might have a good conversation with them, but then when you get back home, do you just pull out your phone and pull up like Tinder? Oh, cool, yeah, he's messaged me or she's messaged me, and then you go out on 3 more dates that week. And do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, I'm not jealous of people being single now. I think it's,
oh god, it seems brutal. Like, if you fantasize about being single, you want to fantasize about being single, you know, well, I was going to say in, you know, in like, you know, whenever your teens was, but I guess the best time would be like, you know, the 70s, right?
Yeah. After women's lib, and
after the pill, but before AIDS.
I mean, that really is. That's like the narrow window you want to get in there. Yeah, 70s.
Yeah. Yeah. Someone who did all their fucking in the 70s. Oh, lucky.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like, because the thing is, it's like my girlfriend, we met because she saw me walking around the library.
Yeah.
And I looked like a fucking weird
books
guy.
On philosophy.
Yeah,
fuck.
Oh no! Back then, I hated philosophy. I was like, it's for wankers. But it's just a fucking bunch of motivational quotes. But no, because I did a fucking music degree. I did music and creative writing, and so I was just walking around with a guitar with a really long leather jacket and a fucking top hat, probably. I used to geeze about. But then, you meet someone and you start learning fucking little bits about them. You're like, oh, you like that same band and this and that. And I guess you know, you match up on Tinder. Yeah, you're going to still get some of that, but it's still been funneled through this like algorithmic, you know, and to the extent like everything's an algorithm. I mean, like, shit, like if I hadn't got certain grades and gone to uni and all that kind of stuff, I wouldn't have met my girlfriend. That's still an algorithm, but like, it wasn't swiping on a phone.
Yeah.
But
And it's also you have the romance of circumstance there, where you can say, you know, I went to this uni because I was interested in music or creative writing, and you know, then I decided to go to the library that day. It was all very like, you know, sliding doors, very there was
yeah,
just an
yeah,
opportunity to go and read this book in the library that day, and I just happened to meet your mother that day. Like there's a romance to that you can't
yeah,
replicate by swiping this and swiping that.
yeah.
It's like I met Lucy through internet dating, and she'll probably
Oh,
hate me for saying that because she fucking hates me saying that. But chances are she's never going to listen to this. So, but yeah, we met through internet dating, and like I remember saying before and after I had met her, like I wish that we had met through like friends of friends, because it just feels like such. It's like an organic way of meeting people and getting to know people, and there's that excitement of like, are you going to bring your mate Lucy out again? Oh, cool, yeah. Like, you know, because you hit it off with them last time, and like seeing
yeah,
if you can recreate the spark. Like, whereas, I mean, with apps and internet dating, it's a bit like it works. It obviously works because so many people do it, but you do lose something with it. I think that's undeniable. It's not. There's no romantic story there. No one's going to write a fucking rom-com about Tinder. Can you imagine Tinder the movie?
oh, there must be, but yeah. Oh, do you know? Actually, do you know what? I think when I was doing my screenwriting, one of the guest lecturers was actually writing a fucking screenplay about Tinder.
I hope they got a third.
Oh,
Do you remember
rom
the
com.
name?
I don't, no, I'll have to look it up. I'll
That's a shame.
find out if it actually went anywhere.
We could have Googled them
But
right now and check their LinkedIn. Working in Pret.
oh, that'd be
Yeah.
depressing.
Listen, man, this has been lots of fun. I've got to cut it here, though, because we've been talking for quite a while. But thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been really,
No worries. Thanks
really
for having
interesting.
me.
And are you doing your Acting in Bad Faith show this year, or are you going to bring it back next year, or what?
Well, ideally, I'd never do Edinburgh again because it's brutal and expensive.
Too middle class.
So if I can get, yeah, it's too bougie. So you know, I bought a burger in Pleasance, and the guy selling me it described the prices as repugnant.
That's a hard sell.
But yeah, so I'm gonna keep working on it. Do it in Camden, maybe, if that becomes a substitute for Edinburgh after COVID's ruined Fringe.
Yeah.
Which by all accounts it has. So
okay, well, I'm devastated to hear that the Edinburgh Fringe is not going ahead, even though I had fucking no plans to go. But yeah, I will. I suppose I should sort of direct people to your Instagram, I guess, because you're not on Twitter, right? Or not? Not at the moment.
No. Banned because I called a guy a bitch.
Because you called a bitch a bitch.
No, well, yeah. He was a bitch.
Let's not get into this, all right? So if anyone wants to sort of catch up with you or follow you and check out this show when it does come to fruition, then I guess Stoph Buster Video on Instagram.
Yeah, it's got a link to my YouTube as well, so go on that.
And check out the John Lewis ad parody with the gingerbread man on YouTube. I'm sure if you Google that lot, you'll happen across it. But for now, thank you so much for joining me this evening, Stoph Demetriou.